G'day all, welcome back to Built by Chris. In this episode I'm going to be making one of these. It's a pen blank drilling jig. Hold your blank in there and you can drill a hole in it. I was asked by a viewer to make one. Wanda, this is for you. And I've gone ahead and I've put my own spin on it. There's so many different videos on YouTube on how to make one of these. Not exactly one of these, but how to make a pen blank drilling jig. You can buy them commercially, you can make them yourself. They all do the same thing in the end, and that's drill a hole through a piece of timber, basically. And this is my take on it. It might be a little bit of overkill, but you know, I tested it out and it works fine. So if you want to see how I made this, let's go and have a look and I'll show you how easy they are. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to need for this new pen drilling jig is a base. I've got a piece of scrap plywood here. This plywood's probably about 25mm thick. It doesn't need to be that thick, it's just what I had on hand. I'm going to rip this down to, let me get a size for this. I'm going to rip mine down to about 120mm. So let's set that up now. Let's put that through. Okay, there's my base at exactly 120mm. Now I don't need it to be that long. I'm going to dock it down. Again, just a rough size. All these are rough sizes. I'll probably make it about 250mm. I think that's all I'm going to need. So let me get my my mitered gauge. And let's set this up to cut 250mm. First I'll dock off an end, make sure it's nice and square. Okay, 250. So there's the base of my jig. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run a dado through here. A dado through there, so I can put my T-track in. I'm going to use T-track on this one, so let me set up for that. Okay, let me tell you my setup here. I've driven. Okay, let me show you my setup here for this next cut. I've got my dado marked out, so I'm going to run a dado down here for my T-track. So I've got a center line. I've put some marks down so that when I cut with my dado stack, it's going to go straight down the middle of this piece. And I've got a line marked on my fence where I want to stop, because I don't want to cut all the way through, and I'll show you why that is in a minute. I just want it to look a little bit tidier. It's, you know, so I haven't got a through dado going all the way through. So let me make that cut now, and we'll move on to my next step. Okay, there we have my dado. T-track, obviously I'm going to be cutting it down, because I don't need it to be as long. Oh, that's a nice tight snug fit in there. Beautiful. A couple of screws in there, she won't be going anywhere. So let me just move on to the next step now, and I'll show you what that'll be. Okay, what I've got here is just a block of wood that I've squared off everywhere. I put a mark where I want this block of wood to be, so I'm going to screw it to this vase like that. Obviously I'm going to cut it off to size. Now these blanks come in a lot of different sizes. I've gone through my little my little collection of blanks, and this is about the smallest one that I've got. Now I just want when I cut the V in here, I want it to be the V slightly smaller than this, so that when I push up the next piece to it, it's going to actually clamp it in there nice and tight. And if I've got a bigger piece, it doesn't really matter. So it's going to work on the principle of the smallest one is dictating the size. So all I'm doing roughly here is I'm just positioning it so that it hangs over on the side. If you can see that, it's just hanging over on the side. And I'm going to make just a mark. So that's what I'm going to be cutting out. Now if you want to be like dead super accurate on it, you can use your little square so that exactly 45 degrees. Now this is the bit that I'm cutting out. Now I'm going to do another one exactly the same on another piece of timber. Not quite. I'm going to actually rip this one down a little bit because I don't need it to be that thick. Just needs to be, I don't know, about 45 mil, if that. And I'm going to do another one for the other side. So, but I'm going to cut that on the bandsaw. Again, it doesn't need to be super critical, as long as it's a V that'll sit into. So let's go over to the bandsaw and we'll cut that out. Okay, here I am at the bandsaw. I'm just going to cut this out. I think it's just freehand. None of this is critical sizes. It's just going to be as close as I could possibly get it. There we go. One V cut out. Now, if you haven't got a bandsaw, you can use a jigsaw, you can use a handsaw, you can use whatever you want. Like I said, this isn't critical. It's not rocket science on this part. So there's the first one. Now I've got my second block here. I'm just going to put the first one on top and I'm going to mark it out again. So I've got another one to cut out. Alright, so there's my marks. I'll just cut these out. And there we have two pieces. And that's how they're going to come together. Alright, back over to the table saw and I'll rip these down to size. The table saw, I've set the depth of cut here. I just need to lop off a little bit. It doesn't need to be massive, so there it is there. I might have moved it a little bit further. There we go. And I'll rip both these pieces. Now I'm not sure if the camera caught that or not, but I went straight through a knot and it fired that knot out at about 100 miles an hour, which is a good test, or a good way to show you never to stand behind your cut. Otherwise that would have hit me in the guts. Now I've got plenty here to hit, but it still would have hurt. Always stand to the side of your cut. Safety tip number one. Well, safety tip number one should have been, don't cut through a knot. But anyway, it is what it is. Cut's done. Move on to the next step now. Okay, I've gone ahead and I've pre-drilled the T-track, put 3 holes in it. I've cut it to size, so now I'll just screw it in and we'll move on to the next part. Okay, I've just gone forward again and I've cut this block to size. And now I'm going to position it on here. I've got my glue ready to go, and I'm going to put 3 screws through here to hold it all down, and that'll be the next part of the jig done. So let me get that underway. Now again, I'm just positioning this by eye. It's not rocket science, and I'm just going to hold it there until the glue sort of grabs. That's beautiful. It's nice and flush at the back, nice and flush on the sides. I'll just leave that for a minute, then I'll put the screws in the back. Okay, it's literally been 5 minutes and this is sort of grabbed on nice and tight, so I'll just turn it over and I'll drill a couple of holes in the back here. Alright, let me get the countersink. And let's draw some screws in. There we go. That's on, not going anywhere. Okay, now the last part of the jig. This part here. All I've got to do now is cut this down to size, drill a hole through here that'll accept my T-bolt, wherever I put that, and then we'll test it out. Okay, I've gone ahead, cut the next piece. Now it's easy to assemble. Just put the T-bolt in the track, run the piece over the bolt, and this is how easy it is. All you do is you put your piece in here, move that up, clamp it with your fingers, and tighten it off. Now that's going to hold it pretty tight. So let's go over to the drill press and now give it a test. Here I am at the drill press. I've got my jig in. Now the reason I made mine so long is so I can clamp it down to the table, and that's not moving now. It's all nice and set. Put my blank in, move this up so that it's nice and tight, and clamp that down. Let's drill a hole. And there we have a hole straight through the middle. So the jig works a treat. And there you have it, one homemade pen blank drilling jig. As you can see, worked like a charm, held the timber straight enough so that I could drill straight through the middle of it. So that's a pen blank. Was it overkill? Probably, but I used what I had, and it works really, really well. If you want to make one of them, let me know how you go with it. There's so many different versions and variations on YouTube on how to make one of these. This is my take on it. Like I said, I have a commercially bought one, which I'll probably end up using that more often than not because I paid good money for it, so I need to use it. But it's good to know that I have a backup now if it ever breaks down. Now, if you like the video, let me know. Leave a comment below. I read every one of my comments, and I try to answer all of them. And that's it for this episode. So thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.